Click the link. Come on.
Welcome back to Way Past Due. Tonight, we're going to compare Otis Taylor with modern era receivers, apples to apples. And guess what? Nobody's safe, especially you, Roman Aguilar.
It's over there.
Everybody, welcome back to Way Past Due. It is way past due time for Otis Taylor, the Kansas City Chiefs, to be in the Hall of Fame. I'm here with my sometimes co-hosts, my frenemy of all time, Bryce, Pinson. Again, I'm Jason Watkins, and welcome back to Way Past Due. Kind of just real quick, obviously this is tomorrow, or well, it's actually today now, June 1. This is the nomination day for the Hall of Fame. So all these guys that we've been looking to get, generally Otis Taylor, we've been really trying to get people to nominate him for the Hall of Fame. He has been out of the Hall of Fame for 42 years since he's gotten eligible, Bryce. I think that we've kind of established, at least among fans of his anyway, that he definitely belongs. I think that's clear. I think that we also I would say that we also have changed some minds about him as well, but I don't think enough of them. And the reason I say that is because a friend of both of ours,
You don't say.
Kind of a friend of both of ours, had some stuff to say to me a couple of weeks ago. And by the way, I'm going to go ahead and thank him for that, for talking that trash, because what he did was made me find a way to prove him wrong and to prove everybody wrong. And the reason why Otis Taylor has been kept out of the Hall of Fame all this time is junk, garbage, crap. Okay.
It didn't take much to prove him wrong, Jason.
That's true. Listen, if you can look at the video of these guys and go that other way, then there's something wrong with your eyes. So,
yeah.
Before we say anything else, essentially what was said, Roman Aguilar, you know who you are. You know who you are, bro. Sends me a text message the other day, or this is about a week and a half ago now. And essentially he's saying Otis Taylor sucks. Just doing what Roman does, trying to talk crap. You know, that's what Roman does. We get this.
Yep.
And by the end of it, he did say that he agreed that he deserved to be in the Hall of Fame, which I appreciate that, because I think that that's clear. Otherwise, we don't have any reason to talk about it. You know what I mean? If he's not going to admit to that, then we don't need to talk. But he did say and continue to hold on to this line that I don't know how you're going to put him up against the best wide receivers of all time, though. He's not T.O. He's not Michael Irvin. He's not. I was like, whoa, Michael Irvin. First of all, I can put him up against T.O., and I will put him up against T.O., and I'll put him up against T.O. all damn day. Although over a longer period of time, yes, T.O.'s numbers are going to always be better than what Otis's could have been, even at his averages. But what I'm going to tell you is I'm so glad that he threw in the Michael Irvin stuff, because my eyeball tells me that Michael Irvin ain't got shit on Otis.
That's Am I wrong? Fact. No doubt, man. And like everything that you said there, whenever it comes to Michael Irvin, it's absolutely laughable. You know what I'm saying? And yeah, he'll never have the stats as
he was a great player. Listen, and before we go too far on killing Irvin, he was a good player, great player at that. But man, I think that the problem that we've run into is that it's been so long since Otis played, and most people don't even know who the hell he is. I didn't know who he was before I got involved in this, right? I didn't know who he was. You didn't know who he was. But that's you can't look at him and readjust your thinking. I mean, is it impossible to do this? I mean, tell me if I'm wrong. Is it?
It's not, man, because like I'm saying, like with the stats, you're right. The stats sometimes they lie in this situation. They absolutely lie. But when you watch the players play, like that's where I see whenever I watch Michael Irvin versus Otis Taylor, which guy would I pick on my team? It's no doubt it's not close. But then what you're about to show us here in a second is that how bad the stats lie.
Correct. Hey, you. Yeah, you. Click the like and subscribe button already. We need subscribers. It helps the algorithm, gets more people out there talking about Otis Taylor. Kind of important. Click the buttons. Like, subscribe, notifications. Go. Correct.
And I think it's huge.
And I think that, and this is where, again, I'm going to thank Roman for talking crap about it, because all it made me want to do was dive in there. And because I've never thought the stats were wrong. I thought that the stats were what they were. But I also was taking into context that he played for a team that didn't throw the ball. And even in a time that was particularly run heavy, the Chiefs ran it more than everybody else.
Jason, tell us how much they didn't throw the ball. Tell me about that game.
October the 20th, 1968. And listen, we've established that I got some issues that I'm going to sit here and go back through games in the 60s. Okay, I don't have much of a life right now. All right. Now, that being said, I'm looking at these games. Otis actually had gotten hurt during this season also, but I was trying to kind of figure out what it was, why are they not throwing the ball? Well, I get to October 20th, 1968. They're playing the Raiders, the hated Raiders, at home, big game. It's for first place in the division, all that. So out of 60 plays, they had 63 total plays, Bryce. Out of 63 total plays, 60 of them, 60, not 6, 60 were run plays. Lynn Dawson was 2 for 3 that day throwing the ball. 2 for 3 for 12 yards.
That makes me think of that game, and I want to kind of go back and look at it. Do you remember that game where the Dolphins beat the Patriots and they ran the ball? The what was that play? The Wildcat offense.
Yes, with Ronnie Brown and Ronnie Brown, and who was the other guy?
I don't remember.
The guy was from Auburn though. It was Ronnie Brown, and then the guy from Auburn.
Was it a Williams?
Yeah. I forget the dude's name, man.
Either way, all I'm saying is
the Wildcat offense.
I bet they threw it more than 3 times that day.
Yeah, maybe. I would guess you're right. Yeah, I don't even think they had a quarterback in most of the day, did they?
No, they didn't. And they threw the ball more than 3 times. That's 3 times.
Listen, and that's the whole thing. I remember at that Wildcat time that I was talking about that being like, there's no way this lasts. There's no way that this, like, somebody like Belichick is going to figure this offense out in a matter of days, and this will be over with.
Bro, Belichick can't beat the Dolphins for some reason. I don't know what it is. He could beat everyone else.
He struggles with them, yes. But the Wildcat didn't last. The Wildcat didn't last, bro.
That's one game.
Yeah, and now they'll have special plays where they'll run it once or something like that. But yeah, it's like, well, come on, man. But again, and we're talking about it. Listen, man, in the AFL, when the AFL came along, they were the fun league. They were the ones that they had the flashier uniforms and names on the back of the jersey, and they were throwing the ball around. Ken Houston talks about when we played NFL teams, they're 3 yards in a cloud of dust crap. Who needs that? But aside from most of the teams in the AFL, you think about John Hadel and Lance Allworth, they were throwing the hell out of the ball. And the same with they called Darryl LaMonica from the Raiders the Mad Bomber, because they threw the hell out of the ball.
Yeah.
Right? But with the Chiefs, Stram had 1,000 different sets, but all of them were sniffer eye up your butt sets. That's all it was. They were going to stack running backs behind each other with their noses up each other's asses. It was ridiculous. Yeah. So while you have the best, and listen, I can't even stress this enough. No matter who you talk to, if the guy played in the league or coached in the league during or around that time, all of them are going to tell you that Otis Taylor was probably the best football player in the world at that point. You know, he was the best athlete. Ken Houston, I mean, I keep bringing this up. Ken Houston. Yeah. 99 in Madden, top 100 player. Where, you know, this is a safety that, you know, you compare him to guys like Ronnie Lott for us modern day guys. Okay. This is a guy that was like Ronnie Lott back in those days. All right. He says, he calls him Muhammad Ali, Jim Brown. And he was talking about that the first time he met Jim Brown, he couldn't talk. You know, that's how in awe he was. And you know what? You look at Jim Brown, and I mean, now that he's in his 80s and stuff, the dude still looks like he'd beat the hell out of you. You know what I mean? He's just a big, bad dude, right? And so, I mean, to guys like Ken Houston, and even I mean, we all have respect for Muhammad Ali because he's the greatest. You know what I mean? It's Ali. But to that generation, it would be like our Michael Jordan, or or even like this newer generation's LeBron. LeBron is a superlative athlete to everybody else, right? He's just different. The guy's just different.
Bigger, faster, stronger.
Bigger, faster, stronger, smarter, the whole nine, right? He just does things differently. That's how we thought about Michael, and guys like Walter Payton. I mean, I think of Walter Payton, it's like, dude, Sweetness was the man.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, he was the man. Right. Yeah, or Jerry Rice, bro. Same thing. The guy was the man. And so you think about these guys, and this was Otis Taylor, folks. This is who Otis Taylor was. And to him, that's who he compared him to. It was like Ali or Jim Brown. And I thought, I've had to think about that a lot, but it gave me a ton of context. Now, what I want to tell you is the Michael Irvin thing pissed me off, Roman. Because I got to tell you, man, it's one thing if you want to throw T.O. at me, fine. Okay. T.O.'s the second best receiver of all time, as far as I'm concerned, with modern day anyway. It could also be could also be Randy Moss. But if you want to throw those guys at me against Otis Taylor, then fine. I'll give you that. Except that, thank you for throwing Michael Irvin, because now I can actually show you how Otis was as good as both of those guys, and even as good as Jerry Rice for a stretch. Now, Jerry Rice is still never going to get caught because Jerry Rice played forever and put up 23,000 yards almost. Okay, you're not catching it. And the truth of it is, the guy outworked everybody else, probably including Otis. Okay?
That's true.
But he had to. He wasn't the athlete that these other guys were either.
Fact.
Hey, everybody, welcome back to Way Past Due. I'm your host, Jason Watkins. Way Past Due is the advanced lifestyle sports docuseries dedicated to bringing former Kansas City wideout Otis Taylor's exclusion from the Pro Football Hall of Fame to an end. We are powered by Riverside.fm, the online recording studio that the pros use to record podcasts and video from anywhere in studio quality and direct from your browser. Are you sweating the tech stuff? I don't do that. Riverside is going to take care of all the details. And throughout the entire production process, all you got to focus on is creating great content. With all that done for you, you'd figure it was pretty expensive, right? Nope, not so much. We're actually going to give you the first hour for free, and then you get to choose a plan to start recording. You can start with as low as 5 hours a month for just $15. Or if you have a lot more to do, customize your package. But you can start it low and head on up. You really can't go wrong with Riverside, man. This is the easiest way to start your video podcasting journey. So get going. 100%. If it wasn't for that big hill that he climbed 4 or 5 times a day, he would not have been that dude. You know what I mean? And that just goes to show you that hard work still does matter. You know what I mean? It does.
740, like.
Yeah, bro, come on.
Slow.
But on football field speed is different than 40 speed.
I agree, but still, it says something about you. It doesn't. It says that
absolutely.
You're not as fast as some of the like Calvin Johnson has probably a faster football speed. Randy Moss T.O. have a faster football speed than Jerry Rice.
Sure. Oh yeah. But as far as but he was precision. He was hard work, and he never dropped footballs.
Never.
No. So I got to, after we did the podcast, which by the way is up right now, Nobody's Safe podcast. Everybody check that out as well. We did one the other day of our wide receiver rankings. It would be the Nobody's Safe rankings, the Jason Bryce rankings, whatever you want to call them. But we put them up there.
Named that, Jason? Did you see what I named
that?
The
Jay Bryce?
No, I literally put on there, I was like, episode 4, because episode 2 and 3 were a screaming match. And you wouldn't have heard anything anyways.
Yeah,
that's literally the name of the podcast, because
that's awesome.
Episode 2 and 3 were such a disaster. And so that's why I named it that. But episode 4 was great.
I think it was good. I think it was real good. And it kind of brought us back into this, which my statistical comparison, I've named it, and we even trademarked it, is the apples to apples, because everybody wants to act like comparing these guys across eras is apples to apples. And the truth of it is, it isn't. It is not.
17 games like that right there, 3 extra games. That's 300.
Right. Even the 2 games, because they just went to 17. But even just going on 16 games, just in that amount of time. Hey, listen, over a 10-year period, that's 20 football games.
Yeah.
So it's 20 football games, which is like, if you're averaging, Otis averaged 56 yards a game because he didn't get but 3.2 catches per game. That tells you they weren't throwing the ball. Guys like Jerry Rice, guys like Jerry Rice averaged over 5 catches a game.
Sometimes Otis Taylor's team didn't throw the ball 3 times a game.
Right. What the fuck, man? Yeah. And that's the thing, is like something that we had gotten off, and I did fix it in the video. But we were talking about that Calvin Johnson 1,900 and almost 2,000 yard season, right? He averaged, we thought I'd done the calculation wrong at that point, but it was 61%. We thought he had he caught 27% of the balls. Well, just for instance, 1971, which was Otis Taylor's UPI MVP, second in the AP MVP voting, which only Jerry Rice has done that other than him. He had 31% of the Chiefs' receptions were to him, period. So the completions this guy's production, and that's what this stat is about. The apples to apples production is about production. It's not about raw stats that you can look at and say, oh, wow, yeah, that makes sense. Of course, 7,300 yards does not look like 15,000 yards. It doesn't. It doesn't look like 22,000 yards either. But neither does the game. If you watched a game from 1965 right now, and the next one you watch was an NFL game from today, you would never watch another game from 65 because this was shit. They didn't throw the ball. They didn't. It was a snore fest. The one good thing about it is the clock never stopped because they ran the ball all day, so it would be over quicker. But
if you have a brain, you realize, well, you have a brain, and that's why you put together this apples to apples stat. You realize that, there is something there. There's more to the story, and yes, you can see that the yards are different. But when you have an actual brain, you can see that there is more to the story.
Well, and if you were watching football during that time, that Otis Taylor was one of the best players in the world. Okay, if you were watching football, there's a guy on the way on our website or on the YouTube channel even, that posted a video, and he's a Raider fan, and he was like, "Dude, I hated this fucking guy. I couldn't stand him. But because I wished we had him. Yeah. You know what I mean? It's like how you think of the people that didn't like Michael Jordan. They were probably Knicks fans. You know what I mean? They were probably Knicks fans or like Detroit fans or something like that. Because, shit, why would you like him? If you're not a LeBron fan, it's probably because there's reasons to not like LeBron. But it certainly, if your team was anybody but the Heat or the Cleveland back in the early days, that, you did not want, you knew you were going to have to deal with his ass. If you're a Celtics fan, why would you like LeBron? It's like being a Celtics fan and liking Magic Johnson. Not happening, right?
Yeah.
You know, you're a Larry Bird guy, period.
Yep.
That's how it is, you know. So it's the same here. And that's what this guy was talking about. I talked to Weird Wolf on our show last week, and he's talking about, man, I couldn't stand freaking, what's his name? Bulletnikov. God, I couldn't stand that little fucker. And he was like, but it's because he made plays. You know, he was Otis for, you know, he was like our Otis, only not as good. You know, and he would say that. And I don't think anybody would tell you that Bulletnikov was better. I really don't. And if you were watching football, you can look at his numbers and say, yeah, he's got 1,600 more yards and 16 more touchdowns. But you better look at the fact that he had 190 more catches to get that far, and it took 60 more games. If that doesn't mean anything to you, then you're not paying attention. If it doesn't mean that, okay, let's go into this.
This is the Apples to Apples Wide Receiver Statistical Comparison Calculator, brought to you by Way Past Due.
Michael Irvin had a great career. You know, you look at his overall career was, let me share this real quick. His overall career numbers, do you want to pull that up real quick?
Sure. I'll pull it up
because I'm just going to do a couple of seasons here. That's what I have right now. So I'm sharing that screen. So, okay. So let's just talk a little bit about Michael Irvin's 1995 season. Okay. This was absolutely his best season. He had 111 receptions, 1,603 yards, which is at 15.1 yards per reception. He averaged a little over 100.2 yards per game. Okay. 10 touchdowns. And the stat that is a big part of the apples to apples stat is the touchdowns per reception ratio. So the only thing that we change in the apples to apples is essentially what we're going to do to account for production. We want to go by production only. So you want to look at, instead of looking at the raw number of 1,603 that we got here, right? Instead of looking at that, what you want to look at is this. You've got your yards per reception and you've got touchdowns per reception. Okay. So if you're looking at this right now, you're going to see where this is going. And I'm going to tell you something. I could do this with every freaking receiver in the world that's ever played. It works with all of them. So Roman, you were wrong. Okay. Good. You're screwed right now. Here we go. All right. So if you swap out those two numbers, the only thing that you swap out is you have to account for the 14 games that Otis played versus the 16 that Michael Irvin played. And this is in one season. This is in one season. Okay. So you're looking at, okay, those 111 receptions, those go to Otis. And he gets Otis's 57 at 14 games. Okay. The rest of them stay the same. You keep your touchdown per reception ratio. You keep your yards per game, your yards per reception ratio. Those are yours. Those don't change. Okay. Now look at this. Let's just talk about Otis's season. This was an MVP season, as I said. 1,110 yards on 57 catches. That on 57 catches. A 57 catches like a second running back or some crap nowadays, right?
Let me jump in here real quick, Jason.
Go.
I just want to say something real quick because this is good. The reason I like that you're choosing Michael Irvin, because some people might be trying to say, like, okay, they don't throw the ball as much, Otis Taylor, but the Cowboys did. No, the Cowboys were more of a running team too.
They had Emmitt Smith.
These guys ran the ball to Emmitt Smith a lot. Yeah, so right here, this is real. Like Otis Taylor, this is a real season he could have had if he played for the Dallas Cowboys in that season. I think this is reality.
Right. Now, something else to consider, and I haven't pulled this up yet, but it's on this sheet, I'm pretty sure. Either way, I'll give it to you. Now, the run to pass ratio here in 1971, the Chiefs threw the ball, attempted throws were 337 of them. Okay. The Cowboys completed 320. They completed 320. Now, the Cowboys were never going to be more. Well, they still threw it more than they ran, but they were always. They had Emmitt Smith. They had to run. They were going to have to run. So they weren't the super. They're not. We're not talking about the greatest show on turf. We're not talking about Texas Tech air raid. That's not what we're doing here. We're talking about a real run first team kind of against a team that only runs. And this is what the issue is. Okay, just reception wise, look at this. He damn near doubled Otis in catches because they threw the ball that much more. You realize the Chiefs threw the ball 15, 16 more times in the entire season than they had receptions. I mean, we're talking the Cowboys were at 320 completed passes, not attempts, completed passes. Okay, so that's important to remember as well. But so Otis' season at 57 receptions to have 1,100 yards, that should that'll tell you that during that time how big a season 1,110 yards was. This wasn't even his best season. But 1,110 yards in that time period, particularly on that team that was, they were overtime loss to Miami away from going back to the Super Bowl and probably beating your Cowboys, folks, because that's who lost to the Dolphins that year, by the way. All right. So, here we go. Anyway, so receiving, yards per reception. This was his second best year at that as well. He was at 19.5 yards per reception, 56.2 yards per game. Nope, that's not right. It was 79. It was 79 something per game. None of that matters as far as the actual stats are concerned, though. It's not into the equation. It's just a number, but it would matter later. But okay, so he had 7 touchdowns. So all of this, if you look at just straight across, these are their actual numbers. Okay, forget about the games played. You look at this: 111 receptions. Wow, that's a hell of a year. 57 receptions. These days that's nothing, right? Receiving yards though, 1,603. It's not in the top 20 anymore, but that's only because the game has evolved so much that 1,600 yards is actually becoming one of those where if you got 1,000 used to, that was a big season for a receiver. Now you need to get to 1,500 to be one of the best, But listen, at the time that this happened, this was a monster year, right? 15.1 yards per reception, 100.2 yards. If you average 100 yards in a game, I don't care what we're talking about. You're a bad dude, right?
Yeah.
Plain and simple. And his touchdown per reception ratio, he was at almost 10%. Almost 10% of his catches resulted in a touchdown. 0.9. That's good. Now, but if you look at Otis here, on his 57 catches, he's 500 yards behind, almost 500 yards behind. But he had 19.5 yards per reception. What just happened to my mouse here? Here we go. Lost my mouse. I lost it. Okay. He had 19.5 yards per reception, right? And so that's going to get you to, he had 56.2, no, it was 79.3 yards per game. I have it on another screen. I'm looking right at it. Gotcha. And his touchdowns, he had 7 touchdowns. So his touchdown per reception ratio is going to be higher because he had only 57 receptions in the season and he had 7 touchdowns, which is just 3 less than Michael Irvin had in an additional 2 games, by the way. Now imagine at that 79 point, let's just call it 80 yards, that's another 150 yards just on that, on the amount of catches that he was going to have. Now this is the issue that we're having here is that nobody is paying attention to the fact, man, we got an issue here.
What's up?
My mouse isn't working. I got another one here, but I'm hoping one of them works. Can't even close anything. All right. All right. So what people aren't really paying attention to the fact is that, again, if you try to compare it apples to apples right now, if you're just looking at their actual numbers, then, I mean, the raw numbers tell you Michael Irvin's season was better.
But that's not the same because we got 2 more seasons and we got a league that doesn't throw the ball. We have a league that doesn't have illegal contact. So that's why we're doing this.
Exactly. Well, yeah, and I didn't even bring up the illegal contact part. I'm glad you did. But yeah, you couldn't beat him up off the line. You could bump him at the line and you could run with him, but you couldn't touch him all after that. Michael Irvin could do what he wanted to. I mean, if you watch any of the videos that we've been putting out there on Otis, there's the one video where it's showing from the end zone, and that linebacker's beating the holy crap out of him until he gets to, and he sheds him finally and catches the ball in the end zone and then throws it at him. You could tell it was pissed him off that he was getting beat to death right there, right? I don't know what's going on with this. Something ain't right, though. So, again, this is not – it's the reason it – and the fact is it's bad enough that people like Roman do this, right? What's worse is the fucking Hall of Fame's doing it too.
Yeah.
We're talking about a man that's been out of football, or he's been eligible for the Hall of Fame for over 40 years. 40 freaking years.
Yep.
And he's only been a finalist once, and that was after it was as a senior. And then he didn't even roll over into the finalists the year after that, which is kind of weird. They're supposed to, right? So my question is what the hell's going on that we're not actually, that even these guys ain't paying attention? Let's look at these adjusted stats. If we just swap those two, he gets 16 games and 111 receptions, which, by the way, he had over 30% of his team's catches on a season. Out of all the completions that the Chiefs had, his was at 31.6%. Michael Irvin's this year was 26%, which was his highest of his career on amount of catches for the team. Okay. So he's still behind there. So us swapping receptions is nothing wrong with that, because I can tell you, if you put Otis Taylor on that team, you think that Troy Aikman's not going to throw to him like he threw to Michael?
He's going to throw to him more.
Yeah, I think he is too. But at least he would. It would be as much, would it not? I mean, isn't that it's a fair statement?
And this is something I'm thinking about, and I'll let you get into the stats. But even then, like, let's say you're not perfect. Let's say this is obviously it's not going to be perfect. But let's say it's lower, and let's say the other one's higher. We're talking 1,300 yards difference here. Like, even if you're a little off, you are crushing Michael Irvin.
Right.
With Otis Taylor.
That's right.
Even if you're off your rocker a little bit, Jason, it's still not even close.
Right. Yeah, and what I would tell you is that I want to tell people to look at these stats, look at the stat boxes from top left to bottom right and top right to bottom left, a diagonal look. Because what you want to look at is the actual numbers versus the adjusted on all of it. Okay. So, for instance, okay, there's my mouse. All right.
Well, thanks for being back, mouse.
All right. So, Michael Irvin, if you're looking at his actual numbers here, then what we want to do is go up against Otis's adjusted numbers. So, at the same amount of games and receptions, you're going to have him he still gets him by 500 yards because of his 19.5 yards per reception that year. And he's going to get him in touchdowns too. He's going to beat his 10 touchdowns. Going to beat it to death by 4 just because of the fact that he was over 12% of the catches that he had were touchdowns. And in fact, over his career, he was 15% of his receptions were touchdowns, which is by far higher than anybody in the modern era. Anybody in the modern era.
Crazy.
Okay. So, but if you look at, and now adjusting Otis's actual numbers to adjusting Michael's. If he had 1971 at his 15.1 average and only 0.09 touchdowns per reception, he's going to drop from 7, where Otis had 7 touchdowns, he would have only gotten 5. Yards per game, he would have gone down. It's 79, not that. But he would have went from 11-10. He would not have had a 1,000-yard season. And this is exactly why 1,000-yard seasons were so scarce in those days, because they just didn't happen. Okay. Biletnikoff had 1 in his career. Lynn Swan, none.
I like that you did that with the adjusted, season average rather than regular. That still shows just how good Otis was.
Yes, because and that is important because of the fact that, look, if you look at even his career average was 15.9, so Michael gets an uptick from his actual season. You know what I mean?
Yep.
If you adjust it. So he still wouldn't have gotten to 1,000 yards. That's what I'm trying to tell you, folks. The apples to apples comparisons are stupid. Stop doing it. Stop doing it. Look at it. Look further. Look deeper into this than what you can just see past your nose and realize that Otis Taylor was one of the best players to ever play. He was one of the best receivers to ever play the game. If you look at their career numbers, this is your breakdown for this is Irvin's first 10 seasons. He only played 12. He barely went over this anyway, but I was going to go apples to apples with everybody just so that these were his best 10 seasons, okay? He started in 1988, so this would have been through 97 of Michael Irvin's career, okay? Otis played more games in this stretch than Michael Irvin did because of he had some injuries, okay? Or no, he played 9 less games total. If you adjust it and swap them out, that's where we end up, all right? So looking at Michael played 139 games in 10 seasons. Otis played 130. That accounts for injuries plus the 2 extra games at 16 games a year. All right. So Michael would have had 666 receptions to Otis's 410. That's the other thing. Guys, again, how in the world can you put up that kind of number, that like even a number that Michael Irvin had, when you don't throw the football? These 256 receptions behind in only 9 less games. 250. The one we did with Calvin Johnson, their careers were 5 games apart. Calvin Johnson had 300 plus more receptions in that time. 350.
Stafford was slinging the rock.
Of course, yeah. Look, what else did they have? I would have thrown the shit out of it too.
Name a running back during that time.
I don't remember the guy. I don't remember the dude. Yeah. After Barry Sanders left, I don't remember none of them.
Me neither. There weren't any of them. They might not have had a running back on the roster.
I don't think so. I think they just put somebody out there to block. But so, and then Michael Irvin's he averaged 16. I'm not positive that he averaged 16 for that 10 seasons. Yes, he did. I did the stat. So over those 10 seasons, he averaged 16.0 yards per reception. Now, and that's even if you rounded up, his normal average was 15.9. So it's right about that. But listen, folks, Otis Taylor averaged 17.8 for his career. And we're talking that, he had a year where he was 19.5. He had another year where he was 18.7. He had another year where he was 22.3 in 1966, where he had 1,297 yards, also on 57 receptions. That was probably the greatest season of all time. It would have blown, but either one of those seasons would have broken the NFL record set by Calvin Johnson of 1964. Otis had 2165 if you weight that with Michael Irvin's reception count and games. He breaks the record. If you give him Calvin Johnson's, he had 122. He blows it away. It becomes like 2,600. Insanity. A ton. Right? Now, the bottom line is this. Whether or not you want to, look, not everybody has to you could say, okay, well, maybe his yards per reception go down if he gets more catches. Okay, maybe. Is it going to go down that much to where he's not going to still be on par with these folks? Because I'm going to tell you it isn't. And all you have to do is look at a video and know that I'm wrong. I'm not wrong. And the other thing is if he's playing in that era, like you brought up a few minutes ago, if he's playing in Michael Irvin's era, he probably plays a lot longer than 10 years because he's not getting beat to death all the way down the field. He's not.
Yep.
And his teammates, Bobby Bell and Johnny Robinson, these are both Hall of Fame guys. And even Ken Houston said the same thing. We cut his ass on the line because you better.
Yeah.
We would cut his legs out from under him on the line. Otherwise, you can't stop him. Johnny Robinson goes, I can't imagine what they would have done if they couldn't drape themselves all over him for all the way up and down the field. If you couldn't touch him after 5 yards, you would have never touched him again.
That's a good way to put it.
You know, because he was faster. The dude was 6'3", 220, but he was fast. He ran a sub 4.5. He ran a 4.4, 240. That was midway through his career. He ran a 4.42.
Yep.
So this ridiculous thought process that, first off, these stats are real. This is a real deal. This is production stats because you have to look at it beyond just the number of yardage and touchdowns or whatever that he achieved. The fact is, he had more of his catches for his career were for a touchdown than anybody but Jerry Rice and Randy Moss. Those are the two guys in history that had a better touchdown per reception ratio. And they had it by 1%. It was 15% to 16%. There's two men all time that had a higher TD perception or reception ratio. Those
zone threat before they come to the red zone threat. You know what I'm
right.
saying? He was the full red zone
He
threat.
he was gonna stay. Just like those guys. I think back on Randy Moss, and I think back on Jerry Rice is the same way. How many times it was like, man, that guy didn't catch anything but touchdown passes. You know? Like, dude, I watched after doing the pod I was editing the pod yesterday, our podcast where we're talking about all these guys, and I started watching Randy Moss. Oh my god, dude, that guy, the guy just some of the catches, bro, were insanity,
Absolutely nuts,
insanity. But again, I look at Otis's tape and I see the same thing. I don't see the same thing, but I see the same level of brilliance. And that's what it's about. And I can look, I'm glad, Roman, that you brought this up, bro. I really am. I'm glad you brought it up. I'm glad you told me that Michael Irvin was better and that I shouldn't be comparing this guy to the greatest receivers of all times. Because my answer to you that day and today is he's one of the best receivers of all time. So I can say that I can compare them. It's a good comparison because it's real. The production stats tell so. And because you said that shit to me, I looked them up and I've dug in freaking stats for 2 straight days. 2 straight days. I was like, I got to find something here. And it was hitting me right in the face the whole time. And then I called Bryce that day. I was like, what do you think of this? And he goes, yeah. But until you see it, you don't really see it. You know what I mean? Because everybody's guilty of this, right?
This is what I was trying to say. Like, let's just put stats aside. And I know this is a stats podcast, and that's what we wanted to talk about.
Yeah.
I'll tell you right now, like Ken Houston, whenever I think of Ken Houston and I think of a 99 overall in Madden, and someone who says that, Otis Taylor is the best player or one of the best players he's ever played against, like, then you got to take one of the best defensive players that ever played against Michael Irvin. We were talking about Deion Sanders. I didn't hear that out of Deion Sanders' mouth.
I think that Deion, and I remember back in those days that Deion had nothing but respect for Mike. I mean, I think.
Oh, he respected him, but he didn't say he was the best player in the game Ken Houston is talking about Otis. There's a different level of respect. A level of respect where we're talking.
And I think that Michael was one of the best receivers of his era for sure.
No doubt.
He wasn't, but he was not Jerry Rice. He was not
different.
T.O.
Yeah.
He was not any of those
And
guys.
Otis Taylor is.
He is.
He is.
He is. He is. It was Otis and it was Lance Allworth.
Yep.
And Lance was ahead of him.
We're willing to say he's better.
I think he might be better. Yeah, I think that he might be. I don't know that for sure that he is overall because of the fact that they threw the ball so much more than the Chiefs did too.
But we're willing to say.
But listen, give him his due. Lance Allworth was ridiculous.
Yeah.
But definitely they're on each other's level, and there's a difference between the Michael Irvin level and the Jerry Rice level, or the T.O. level, or the Randy Moss level. Right? If you're wanting to think in modern terms. And that's the difference between Otis Taylor and most everybody and Michael Irvin or any of these, listen, we started this and the first time that you put him up against Andre Reed, I was like, man, I don't know if we should do that.
It's too easy. It's way too easy.
I got to tell you, Andre Reed is nothing to Otis Taylor.
And Andre Reed's great.
And he was great. Yes. I'm not hating Andre Reed. I'm telling you, I think he was better than Michael Irvin.
That's what I was about to say.
Yeah.
Like that's close.
Look, Michael Irvin was the best fit for the Cowboys.
Yeah.
The reason the Cowboys were world champions.
He was a better fit. Who was a better fit?
Nobody. No, listen, you stick Otis in any of these, we could swap him out with, and I got to tell you, as much as Roman got me to think about this stat part, you did too. You always say, swap him out.
Yeah, swap out Otis Taylor right now with Michael Irvin. You give Otis Taylor an opportunity to catch balls.
111 is probably 130.
Well, it might even, let's just say it's less, but we might be throwing the ball farther at that point. And he might be scoring more touchdowns, so he's not catching as many balls.
Well, he definitely scores more touchdowns because he just did. For his career, it was 0.9 to 0.15. That's 6% different in touchdown catches.
But let's even say it's 90. He still blows him out of the water. It's still not close. 90. It's still not close, Jason.
You're right.
But it's probably 111. But all I'm saying is, let's say it's 90.
That's what I'm saying. Those 1,100 and there's 1,110 and 1,297 yard seasons at 57 catches are ridiculous. Ridiculous. He had a 59 catch season in 67 that he just was shy of 1,000 yards. And again, you know what? We've barely talked about that season. It was as big a season as anything Michael Irvin ever had.
Yeah.
59 catches. And that was that was his lower obviously he had a lower per reception rating than his normal. I think it was around 17 something. But again, if you start looking at this kind of stuff, look at just break this down. I'm going to go ahead and show the screen for one more second, because I didn't go over this. Over their careers, look at this. They passed the ball in Dallas. Even this is not a pass-heavy team. They still threw the ball 1,500 more times over those same periods. 1,500. Yep. And this is this is like a 50-50 team. A little over 50. It's like 55-45 Cowboys pass to run. Okay. And not to mention, they had guys like Jay Novacek. You got to get him the ball too. You know what I mean? You got to get him the ball too. So they were throwing the ball.
Alvin Harper,
they were throwing the ball to him when he was there. And they had Troy Aikman. You need to use his arm. It was good. Right? So.
Yep. Absolutely.
He's a Hall of Famer, folks. Plain and simple. Absolutely. If you don't think...
Get him in. Tell us how to get him in.
Yeah.
And this one's good. Let's put a bow on this baby. We need to tell him how to get him in. It's the last day, right? Or today's the day.
Today's it. So now it's time. Forget about sending letters to the Hall. Get online. Post things to the Hall of Fame. You want to go at the Hall of Fame. And it's at Pro Football, at the at symbol, Pro Football HOF. Everything that you tweet, everything that you post to Facebook, send it right to them. Tell them to put Otis Taylor in the Hall of Fame. It's way past due for him to be there. We've proven
Way
that he way deserves to be in there. Get him in the freaking Hall of Fame. All right. That's all I got to say about this stuff. I'm angry and pissed off. But Roman, thank you, bro. Appreciate it.
All right.
All right, brother.
See y'all later, man.